All right, everybody. Today's a special video. I'm actually making a live stream here because just a little too lazy to put my camera together. But I actually wanted to do this live stream. Um, Hold on one second. All right, so I actually wanted to do this live stream because of a series of events that's happened over the last, I would say, uh, maybe 10 years, maybe more, maybe less, but 10 years or so. Let me close that up. 10 years and dealing with myself and kind of understanding where I am on this relationship spectrum. So, that being said, today's topic is going to be about the psychology behind relationships and especially when the relationships seem to fail. Now, before I really jump into this, we may all have different definitions of what failure is, right? We may have a failure in the sense of it's a relationship that no longer exists. That relationship is has ended, right? Or maybe the failure is something else. Maybe the failure is you know, a challenge that you guys have moved through and you pushed through and decided to keep it together. Either way, today's topic is the psychology behind relationships, especially when it comes to types. I'm going to try to link a little bit of typology in here so we can begin to understand some of the things that are going to happen. I'm going to do as I always do, open up a little bit more than I'm comfortable with, just so you guys can understand that not everything's perfect. A lot of people go online and present things as if they are perfect, and I do not want to present that. I want to present it as is. So let's begin this concept by talking about the psychological understanding of relationships. So this is an area I've particularly struggled with because um, I'm talking about a romantic relationship here, not just a regular relationship with another person. Okay, but I will be going back and forth, and I'll make the distinguishment when necessary. So, in the sense of the psychological understanding of a relationship, I've always had a difficulty with this because I've never really found a purpose for a relationship. When I visualize a relationship, I don't visualize one for myself. As far as romantic relationships go, I don't see myself ever being in one. Um, I never have. I can obviously paint a fairy tale in my own head, but it doesn't seem realistic for the way that I know myself. Now, this ego distortion that we create about ourselves tends to be our limitations. So, being aware of that, I realize that I might be setting a limitation on myself, which I'll talk about further. This is for you as well. Whoever's watching this video at any given time, if you have a psychological uh, if you have an ego, you're likely sabotaging yourself in some area of your life. Your particular may fail. That failure may be in another area, but regardless of what it is, if you can take the principles from this video and carry it over to any other area of your life, you might be able to get some value out of it. So if you're pretty successful in the relationship world, then this video is probably not for you. But hopefully, if you're interested in some of this content, you might be able to take that underlying principle um, in hand. Okay, so anyway, I've always struggled with the idea of romance. I've always idealized it. I've always made it something more than it has ever been in my own life. I believed on I thrived when I was younger on the notions of the traditional sense of romance. I'm talking about courting. I'm talking about elegance, class, etiquette, those type of things, and I've always romanticized it in a lot of ways. Um, yeah, we tend to justify this with saying things like, this is the new age, it's the 21st century, texting, that type of thing. I've never been a fan of text messages in the first place, but text messages have often, I feel, they limit the potential of a relationship, although they are a great tool to get quick messages across. I've always felt they've limited that. So for me, I've never really found a purpose in this. Now, this is probably an ego block. I don't see the point of sustaining a romantic relationship in any sense of the word. I've tried to work through it and understand it and get a good understanding of what is going on in my own psychology to see if there's something going on with me that's stopping me from actually pursuing such things, because it seems to be an everyday norm. It seems that most people I come across have yearned for some type of romantic relationship in their life, whereas I really have particularly enjoyed meeting and having brief moments of intimacy with various people throughout my life. And I think that each person has presented a new challenge and moved me in a solid direction. As soon as that relationship is over, I was able to look at hindsight and realize that I've gained and grown from those particular perspectives. Now, this isn't to say that romantic relationships are bad, but it is to say that my experience with them has not been majorly successful. Part of it is because of my own self-sabotage and my own belief that they are not necessary. I don't think I've ever gotten anything other than the hindsight of these relationships and the experience I've gained by working through them, but I don't think I've ever gotten anything as far as something I wouldn't be able to get from just friends. So I've never gotten that kind of value beyond what I get from my friends. My close friends provide pretty much everything I need. So I still don't see the purpose of the romance, but we'll talk about a little bit of my own shortcomings here in a little bit. So the recent situation has occurred in my life in the sense of friendship, where I had a super ego relation with a particular friend, and this particular friend, we had communication difficulties to the level of where either it was some error on my part where I was unable to communicate effectively, or she couldn't receive my messages, or vice versa. But these super ego relations can get really, really messy as far as, people who are presenting a side of themselves that is your weak point, and they target directly your super ego and vice versa. So I never, years ago, if you would have asked me and you would have came to me and said, what do you think of Socionics? I would have told you, I think the relations is stupid. But the more that I start studying this stuff, the more it becomes a reality that one cannot see. I'm going to rephrase. It becomes a reality that you can't possibly get along with everyone in the right way. Sometimes there's communication that cannot be received correctly by other people. And so what you see here is me communicating in a different way than I normally communicate in my day-to-day life. This is obviously I'm talking to myself. I see a screen. I don't see anybody. I don't see any people. I just see myself. So it's like I'm actually kind of just brainstorming out loud. This is the kind of thought process. If I were to be thinking, I'm just thinking out loud. So, but the communication that I actually established with others in my day-to-day interaction has resulted in failure of relationships over and over and over again. And those relationships have culminated into obviously my inability to be able to sustain them, because most people want a relationship. They want a particular thing, right? There's something they value that you're unable to provide, or vice versa. They're unable to provide that to you, and you value that particular thing. So to give up a particular portion of what you identify with, who you are, to compensate for another person, I guess is the serious truth of what holds these relationships together. And I think it really boils down to the word love. And although I don't really fully understand the word love in the sense of what it feels like to experience such thing, I do understand the concept of it, and it helps me understand that maybe I am blocking myself because I really don't see the point or value in any intimate relations beyond just getting to know somebody and being able to provide for them. I feel that's always a good thing. But when you hit the point where you're no longer able to provide for some person because what you provide is not valued by them, or vice versa, what they provide is not valued by you, even though you want it to be valued because you can still care about a person, then it can become very challenging. And this is a good depiction of what one may experience in a super ego relation in Socionics. So, but in recent years, in the last, I would say 12 years, I've played with the idea of dating and getting in serious relationships over and over again. And I've never found myself in one because I could be running from something, but I don't think that's it. I just never have valued the idea of being in something so, I wouldn't say stagnant. It's like I need ever changing. I need things to be continually changing. And for me, it's a period of life, a phase, and you want to move out of it. And for me, it's never been something that I've really had like, oh yeah, we need this kind of stability. And every relationship I've ever had has always ended up in some type of warfare. You know, whether it's verbal warfare, emotional warfare, whatever. But regardless of the case, that is what I've experienced. I'm going to share something I wrote with you guys because um, it's been a pretty tough time for me as far as in my life dealing with this big challenge area. You know, let's see. The trap that I set for myself, I'm going to try to summarize this. I believe when I get into a relationship, um, you know, even one that's not official, like a girlfriend, boyfriend, but when I dive into one, I think I tend to have this thought that I can solve anything. Like I jump in and I can fix things. And because of that, I think I can save the day. And unfortunately, this creates a really, really punishing self trap for me because the person that needs such accommodation generally has one of two responses. One, they thank me for their efforts and lie to me and tell me that I actually helped them. Or two, I use the functions that I use best from a cognitive standpoint and replace the need for emotional comfort, sympathy, and empathy. I replace them with things that I use best, and this is an ineffective way when this person actually needs another type of function that tends to be not available for me. So if the person either accepts and appreciates and lies and tells me that I solved their problem, or the person tells me that I did not solve their problem and I do not understand because I don't have the emotional capacity to understand in one way or another, this tends to strike what my superego is. And when I say superego, I'm not talking about the exact Socionics definition of what superego is. I am talking more along the lines of superego as in your own inner critic, right? The part of you that judges yourself, the part of you that is like your father and criticizing your ego. Your ego may be something that you think who you are, and your superego is the inner critic that criticizes who you are to standards that you are normally not, and things that you don't identify with, but you feel like you should be. This is very depicted in situations where a kid may have identified with, you know, being a baseball player, but the father wanted him to become a lawyer, right? So as he gets older and he plays baseball, he does well because he makes a lot of money, becomes a pro. He's great, but then when he tears his rotator cuff, and he's like, "Oh man, my career is over. What do I do?" And he never really, you know, got a law degree or never really went down that path. He may have an inner critic that says, "Hey, you should have went to law school. You should have went to law school because that way you wouldn't have hurt. You could have done it for the next 30 years. Now what? Now what? Now what?" And it's kind of beating himself up. So when I say superego, I'm referring to this inner critic. And this is something we talk about a lot in NLP as well, is the superego. So, you know, I want to make sure that, you know, we have a full understanding of what I'm saying when I say superego. Okay, so that. Now, aside from that, when we start moving into the concept of what I've experienced is that I tend to meet relationships in the sense of that it has to be in the sense of using too much force. I tend to be over assertive and over aggressive and over initiating and over controlling. And these are areas that I tend to fall short. I tend to bulldoze my way through the concept of relations in general. And this creates a lot of problems for anybody that I've been in relationships with. I think from a cognitive psychology, there's very few types that actually can handle this type of approach in a relationship. And it's unfortunate because I think that if one can accept this exterior and whatever your exterior may be too, whatever you're presenting to the world, if one can accept the surface of what is presented through the ego, they can actually start seeing what's at the core. Right? What is more of your basic human needs? What is your human? And this is more of an id standpoint of what is inside of you, not what you identify with, but your core needs. Right? Super id and id. Right? And more of the super id if you look at socionics, and if you can see that everyone has an inner side, an inner person that needs tender love and care and needs nourishment. It's kind of like. You can see that most people aren't really going to be a problem. Most people aren't going to really be a major issue as far as getting past that rough surface. You realize that rough surface needs a certain thing. But here in Socionics theory, when you strike the superego, you cause pain. And that pain is really problematic in superego relations. So superego relations is painful. It's a painful thing if you get too close. They do well at distance, but they tend to never really super confide in each other as far as going deep and really expressing their core needs. One person in that relation may be too reserved and not feel the need to express them because they generally don't care about the issue, or if they do care about the issue, they approach it with the wrong angle, and it usually winds up being valueless in the first place, and it can be actually provoking. So but I think that being said, there is a matter of willingness to work through it that can actually sort of resolve this dilemma. And you have to accept that a person is going to be a certain way. And I don't think that you should deal with this, but if you find yourself caring about somebody beyond, and you can't live without that person, then there's going to be some large sacrifices being met, because everything that you think is you in a super ego relation needs to be sacrificed. Your leading ego, who you think you are, needs to be thrown away. And otherwise you're going to cause stress being yourself to the other person, and vice versa. They're going to cause stress to you by being themselves. And it's like a complete communication clash in these relations. So I think the channel Talking with Famous People is they're really into this duality thing, and I'm starting to see why they're into it, because it's targeting more of a super id type of function. Yeah, so there's an issue there that one has to understand how all this comes to be, right? How can someone actually connect with another person in a super ego relation or a ego relation, or we're talking about if you're the identity type, right? It's two egos clashing for the same space. This is also can be another problem, right? If you look at ego relations, so a dual relation is best. And I can see why Eric and his what am I want to call him, his acolytes on Talking with Famous People are promoting the dualization, because it does bring out the best in you, and it does bring out and cultivates a complete unity, a complementary opposite, rather than you can be yourself and you actually can charge the person that you're with. Now, a lot of people are going to disagree. They're like, well, I think you can make any relation work. Yeah, you can. You can make any relationship work, but how much are you sacrificing? And at what point does the pain become worth it, right? For someone like me, I try to weigh out the pros and cons. You see the pros and you see the cons. You see the pros, you see the cons. And, the pros can always be good, but when you can get those pros in a friendship, I tend to just stick it with a friendship, right? And eliminate a lot of the cons. Now, the cons will always be there because you're in some type of unhealthy relationship, whether it's super ego or supervision or beneficiary or whatever. You're in some type of relation that's not necessarily going to work for you. So, yeah, you can make every relationship work, but how much are you sacrificing? How much of yourself are you throwing away? Now, like I said, if you really feel the need to, I can't live without this person, then by all means, do what you need to do. Sacrifice all the way. Throw away your ego and who you are and whatever else. Now, I do think the sense of maturity and development of a person can actually encourage the types of relationships. Maybe not so perfect relationship, you can actually improve that. But conflicting relationships, and I don't mean conflictors in socionics, I just mean ones that have a hard time connecting or getting along, can pose as a challenge for that, and they can be peaceful. But for someone like me, I think Peter with World Socionic Society said it best. Types of people of my type their relationships seem to be constant war, or at best, it's like truce in times of war. And that can be a very, very difficult thing to recognize. Whereas I think if you find your dual, you can be yourself, and those type of things can actually be cultivated. And being yourself, obviously, from a spiritual level, you want to transcend what you identify with in the first place, right? If you identify with, LIE or whatever, you identify as your ego, which is TENI, or whatever the type that you identify with, SLE or SEI, or whatever type you identify with, if you start seeing how your ego is attached to this and who you think you are, and you're actually able to transcend that, you probably can keep every relationship. You can probably benefit from any type of relationship ultimately, because you're transcending who you think you are. Now, most of us are not at that level, so we have to learn how to make it work with our current psychology, who we tend to think we are, right? So we don't really transcend, at least not at a young age. Some people, I guess, have transcended the ego at a very early age, but I think that most of us are subject to the ego our entire lives. And no matter how hard we try, we're always going to be identified with something. It could be the material world, could be a thought, could be an idea, could be a relationship, could be an object, it could be anything. It could be something, whatever it may be, some kind of type of connection, right? So, you know, Laylee Pop says that duality is bullshit. You know, I used to think the same thing. But if duality is bullshit, then Socionics is bullshit, MBTI is bullshit. It's all bullshit, right? Because Socionics was founded on duality and targeting aspects of your personality. And there's a book, The Dual Nature of Man, and it's by Aushra, and it's the person who founded Socionics. You can see that the entire theory is founded on dualization and understanding that full psychological fulfillment comes from something. Maybe you see duality as bullshit is because you have not experienced what it's like with a dual, or maybe you just don't fully understand the theory, or maybe the theory is actually wrong, right? So either way, that being said, you're still interested in typology, right? You're still interested in that. So if you look at psychology and when two people actually learn to mesh, right? It makes sense to me. Duality makes sense to me. Not necessarily that you're soulmates, okay? Stop fantasizing or romanticizing the concept of duality, right? Oh yeah, we're going to be together forever because we're soulmates. No, duality is not like that. Duality is essentially that the way that I present my ego, right? Who I think I am, who I associate with, or what I align with, is cultivating to your inner world. It cultivates your inner world and makes you feel more whole. Okay, that's all it is. Vice versa, right? Because I was talking about how we have these two different sides, right? We have these two different sides. We have what we present, who we think we are, and then you find out when you're in a relationship with a certain person that other sides start coming out. Those other sides are unconscious or subconscious. So when the duality, that dual comes and presents that to you, what happens is that unconscious side, underdeveloped unconscious side, becomes more complete because you're presenting an aspect in which they're blind to, but you're also helping them cultivate it, and you're making that person more complete. Okay, so you got to get off the. Now, see, the thing is, Laylee Pop, so far with my understanding, you know, I don't think the ESI is my dual. I actually think I'm the same type as you right now. So that being said, that being said, it just means that I'm always going to be self-exploring. I'm never going to consider myself, well, I say never. I'm never going to, at least right now, I'm not going to consider myself any kind of socionics expert. But I am going to say that I've had enough life experience in the world of dating and relationships where I have sustained warfare with constant amount of people over the years. And I have dated some very amazing people and not so amazing people. And even the very amazing people, it always wound up me screwing something up because that's how I am. I think I undervalue those relationships when they come my way. And when you undervalue something, one is presenting the wholeness and fullness of their heart. But when you don't, you're unable to reciprocate that because it's not as valued. It becomes more like a prop in your life. Oh, I'm single. Oh, I'm not. I'm with somebody. Oh, I'm not. Here's my wife. I present my wife, but I feel nothing, right? Or I present my girlfriend, but yet there's actually no real whatever substance that may be, right? Because I'm not presenting it, it becomes more of a prop. And so that being said, okay, well, you know, Gemini, I am identified with ENTJ on MBTI. But I don't believe, unlike contrary to common theory, that Socionics and MBTI are cross-compatible. They're not. I refute it, and I'll constantly refute it. I've talked with many Socionics experts, and they also refute it. They say it's very different, and I've made videos about why they're different. I've talked about the information elements, how they differ from cognitive functions in the sense of Jungian cognitive functions. They use a lot of the same terms, but they're both categorization that is rooted in a different factor, and one is about an 8-function model. The other is a 4-function model. One is about the cognitive functions in the Jungian sense. The other is about information metabolism in a little bit of Jung, a little bit of Freud, a little bit of the guy who invented information metabolism, and then Ausura's perspective, which added extra blocks. And with this core foundation being entirely different, you're going to find that it's very different. So to give you a very strong example of the difference between the two, then I'm going to go back to the point of this video, is if you take a ESFP, an MBTI, right? Somebody who identifies with ESFP, and you take an ESFP, and that person is identified kind of like a party animal, a drinker, someone who goes out, likes to have a lot of fun, explores life, and his real value, can be emotional, whatever, right? You get this kind of stereotypical party animal, right? Even by the ESFP's official definition, I don't want to really go on this topic on this video, but I'm going to because you guys don't understand what I'm talking about. So I'm going to pull this up, and I'm going to clear this up again, so we can have a good conversation about everything else. So give me just a second. Let me give you the official definition from MBTI, what an ESFP is, okay? All right. ESFP, outgoing, friendly, and accepting, lovers of life, people, and material comforts, working with others to make things happen, you know, make work fun, flexible, spontaneous, adapt readily to new people, environments, learn best by trying a new skill with other people. They're this kind of fun lover, nature enjoying, life enjoying, emotional person in MBTI, right? In Socionics, this is not the case. The ESFP is the same type of Julius Caesar. All right. Julius Caesar was not a party animal. Though he did enjoy the luxuries of life, he was a military war commander. And the way he ran, he tended to ignore logic, and he kind of went by fly, but the ESFP leads with force. They're about power, okay? And in Socionics, the ESFP is all about power. So when we talk about, and I don't like using the word ESFP, I'm going to use the word SEE because that's the 3-letter code. But when we talk about the SEE, I'm going to be talking about the ESFPs that you guys seem to think. Let me go back to the table of contents here. This is a document I've been putting together for you, but it's important you guys really understand that these are 2 different systems, and I've spent the last 4 months studying this stuff. But the SEE, which is ESFP, and I say that reluctantly. So unlike the SLE, the SE uses force in a way not to suppress others, but to recognize their own potential, realize their own ethical agenda. They want to be completely independent of any system. They want to rise to the top. They do not want to be subjugated to command, and they want to be in charge of willful protection of their own interest. They can do they have direct and merciless suppression at times, but they don't do it for the purpose of that. It's more of a value-based control, subjugating others to their power. Okay, so they want to be the best of the best. All right, they want to easily and swiftly attain goals they set. Right, so a lot of ENTJs and MBTI actually go over to SEE. All right, so anyway, I'm going to get off this topic because this is not the topic of this video. All right. It's frustrating. It's really frustrating that I have to get on this topic. But anyway, yeah, John, yeah, exactly. I'm going to pause because I'm going to get back on track to the purpose of this damn video. Anyway, so that being said, if you can bear with me, I don't care if you think the systems are the same or not. That's not the purpose of this freaking video, right? The purpose of this video is to explain that when you're looking at dualization, what you're looking at is fulfillment of the unconscious side of yourself. The side of yourself you're not consciously aware of, right? And you have an unconscious need, right? The id. Right? If you think about the id and you think about the super id in the Socionics way, but you think about the id in the Freudian way, right? There's a need, there's a kind of a basic human needs, and that is fulfilled by the dual, right? By the person who is presenting that with their ego, who attaches to that with their ego, right? So in a very fundamental non-socionic sense, when you're attached to the ego, you have an identity, who you think you are. Some people view themselves as war commanders. Some people view themselves as loving people. Some people view themselves as a great friend, right? You have somebody who views themselves as a great friend, and the way they value a great friend is somebody who listens and who is there for you, right? That's how they value that. And let's say that unconsciously you need someone to be there for you, right? You need someone to be there for you, and you need someone to fulfill that aspect of yourself. But you don't know that consciously because you're identified with being the war commander, right? You don't need anybody. That's your ego, right? I don't need anybody. I can kill everyone in my sight. I can destroy. But on the inside, you may actually need the person who is living their life being attached to this identified friend, right? They think they're a great friend. They're a listener, and they're there for you, and they're there for you every time. And so if you're going out and being a war commander and unconsciously you need that fulfillment on the inside of yourself, and you need somebody to provide that for you, but yet you have a hard time even recognizing that's a need, but that person does it naturally, they're going to make you feel more complete, right? I didn't realize I was something more than a war commander because the ego confines you to this box, right? This is who I think I am. I think I'm who I am right here. I think I'm who I am in this circle. Right? This little description is who I am. And so when you start moving outside that description, realizing that there's a lot more to you than just what you think your ego thinks you are, right? Oh, that's not me. That's not me. You rule it out. And then when you act outside of your ego, like, that's not normally me. What's going on, right? Because I've always identified with somebody who works all the time, just constantly working, getting things done. But there are periods in my life where I hit intense inactivity. Not very often, but I may get super depressed or whatever the case, right? That I just stop working. Stop. That destroys the ego, right? It destroys the ego and makes the ego freak out, right? The ego's like, what's going on? You're not yourself. You're failing. You're losing. You're starting to lose distance from who you thought you were. So you start beating yourself up. The super ego might start criticizing you, right? Because you formed some type of worldview of what you need to be doing. And you're letting go of the ego and you're defaulting super ego or whatever the psychological process is, right? So that's the point of duality, is somebody's filling those unconscious needs for you, right? Somebody is fulfilling those for you. Now, when that person is presenting something that you actually rebuke, or your inner critic is already criticizing you for, and that person is presenting those things to you, you're going to kind of push back on them too, just like the superego pushed back on you. So this is where the conflict in the relation can actually occur in a superego relation, right? And that's the point. So you have to understand that there is an actual theory behind dualization, not the fairy tale. We're soulmates, and when we get together and we merge and we blend in a sexual relationship, it's like all time freezes and blah bullshit, right? Who cares, right? It's not about that. It's about psychological fulfillment from that other person. There will be conflict still, life, financial struggles, whatever, money struggles, people struggles, children struggles, decision-making differences. But the idea is fulfillment of unconscious deprivation, or you feel like you're missing something, right? There's something that needs to be fulfilled. It's so underdeveloped. It's very black and white, and they bring in the other piece. They kind of make it more fulfilling. That's the point of that. Okay, so when a relationship in my life has failed me consistently, and I talk about what I present in relationships from a point that they don't need to be, they don't need to be, they aren't really necessary. At least not consciously. Maybe unconsciously, I feel they are, right? Maybe that's something I actually need. But based on my own observation of myself, I don't think so. Based on what I know, and based on how I see my life and the years down the road, how I see myself living, all I don't think I need it. Now, it's hard to say because your unconscious needs are unconscious. You can't really say, right? But somewhere I believe that when they're unconscious, you can still kind of feel it, what you really crave, but you don't want to tell anybody. I don't want to tell anybody because that's contrary to what people see me as or what I see myself as, right? So anyway, point is that we have to have you have to have a good understanding of yourself, and I think Socionics is a really good tool to do that. I think it's a really amazing tool to help you understand where someone and what someone is presenting to you, right? And also how to adapt to them temporarily, and how to provide what they need temporarily. Now, if they're contrary to you and something you're not good at, you're probably not going to make them feel very good, right? You know, so if somebody needs subconsciously, they need the aspect or the information aspect of emotions, or what we call extroverted feeling, right? And it's something that's unconscious for you, probably not going to make them feel very good. Now, you may not make them feel bad, depending on what you value and what you don't value, and how you present it and how other people present it. But you're probably not going to make them feel good. Now, this is where a lot of the ego is formed, right? This is where a lot of the challenge is, because what we do is that we tend to think we may help somebody. We've all helped somebody. Let's face it. At some point in your life, you've helped somebody in some way, right? Some person, and then you've tried the same approach with someone else, and it was like a total backfire, failure, right? It was like, that didn't work. That didn't work. So this is where you're kind of confused. Like, I don't really know how to approach this person anymore. Maybe you don't have that problem. Maybe it's just me because I'm a logical type and I struggle with dealing with people in general. Maybe you help everyone. But the idea is that a lot of us, we struggle with trying the same approach with multiple people, right? Or trying a different method, or changing gears toward another person. And it becomes challenging because you don't provide it. So I think most of us can say that we've never been able to help everyone in some way, at least by talking to them, right? It's like, does that make sense? And they're like, yeah, but, right? Yeah, but, and they always have a reason. Like, it's not actually clicking. Like, dude, what the hell is wrong with you? When in reality, it's your fault because you're presenting your ego functions to where they actually need something else, unconsciously. Like that person who has a crisis and just needs a hug. Right? That's the last thing I'm going to do. But that's actually what they need. They need it on the inside. They might not even know they need it. But then when somebody else gives them that hug, it's like, oh my God, when he gave me that hug, time froze. And it's like, all my problems disappeared. Right? That's what I'm talking about. They didn't know that that's what they needed, but they got it. And when they got it, it was like the world shifted. Right? And so that's the concept behind all this. And when you start studying socionics and you see these relationships, what you see is patterns. Whether it's 100% right or not is not the idea, but you have to understand the core concept of how you're talking to someone and how you're communicating to someone. It's the same reason why that not everybody loves my channel, right? Somehow the way I present information is attractive to few people, and other people think that I'm horrible. Other people think that I'm arrogant, or other people may think that I'm bullshitting, or other people may think I'm full of shit, or I'm wrong, or whatever, right? Somebody's presenting something in a not effective way, right? Whereas what you're going to find usually when somebody in the super id, this is the part of socionics that I'm talking about now, the super id is what they actually need fulfillment, how somebody actually is fulfilled, right? Whatever's in your super id. If you're an MBTI and you're not really understand, if you tend to just cross over to Socionics and you think it's the same type, I would highly recommend you spend some time in Socionics before you just go, yeah, I'm this type and then I'm this type, right? So you try not to do that. Like, look at them like two separate systems, and see if you do crossover. Now, a lot of times they do cross over. Yeah, you may be the same type in this type, and the chances are that you could very well be the same type in most systems, but you also could not be the same type. So, because there are, I'm going to summarize this whole crossover thing real quick. Aspects of certain functions are covered by different information elements in Socionics. For example, if we think of TE, let's think of a few aspects of TE and MBTI, right? TE is forcefulness, okay? TE is order, okay? TE is creating procedures, order, whatever, right? Creating hierarchies, structuring, vertical organizations, right? This is kind of very, very TE in MBTI. Here's where it's not TE. Okay, let me add one more to that one real quick. It's also about efficiency, cutting out waste, right? It's cutting out, making sure that things are operating in a very efficient way, and it's about process, right? Making sure the process is moving along step 1, step 2, step 3, right? Moving. So we've got few aspects of TE here in MBTI. Now, when we cross over to Socionics, the forcefulness actually goes to SE. The hierarchy goes to TI. The process goes to TE. The eliminating waste kind of goes to TE, but it also goes a little bit SI, but it goes to TE primarily, right? And so you break down how one eliminates waste. So you can see that aspects of TE kind of branch out into multiple things that are covered by different functions in MBTI. So, and in Socionics. So this is why they don't map over fully, okay? Because you may identify with the process part. Oh yeah, I definitely do that. I make sure that step 1, step 2, the empirical order, right? But you're like, I'm not really super forceful about it. You may not identify with the aspect of force, right? So you're like, I'm not really, or you may not identify with the aspect of vertical structure and hierarchy. You're like, I don't really like a chain of command. I'm kind of independent, right? So what I just described was moving out of you transferring directly over into like SLE and moving more into LIE, potentially ILI or LSI or whatever else, right? So you got to understand that we look at aspects of Socionics, and you can start seeing, okay, I identify with this aspect, I don't identify with that aspect. So this is where I fully distinguish the difference here. Now, a lot of people disagree with me. If you look online, a lot of people say they're the same thing, and a lot of people don't. But I have studied MBTI relentlessly for a long time. I've obviously paid a lot of money to get professionally educated in MBTI from the actual people who certify and the people who manage all the research from the Myers-Briggs Foundation. And I definitely see how the Socionics functions are very different, right? So you got to look at aspects, how it breaks down. Okay. So when I talk about MBTI doesn't do relations. MBTI is not about relations. MBTI doesn't reference relations, has nothing to do with relations, right? MBTI is about your own psychological perspective. That's all. Psychological perspectives, right? MBTI is about being objective and subjective. Okay. Whereas Socionics is more about, it's all kind of subjective, right? It's all kind of subjective. There is no objective subjectivity in Socionics in the way that we think of it in MBTI. It's very different. So when you think of relations in Socionics, now you're thinking about inner desires, right? You're starting to get into what needs to be provided to a layer of ego. Now, when you get away from MBTI and you start moving into Jungian, you'll find that Socionics is actually closer to Jungian than MBTI is, right? That's why you'll find out MBTI has kind of moved away from the whole Jungian psychology, and they've moved into dichotomies. E versus I, T versus F, and S versus N, and J versus P, right? You start seeing these dichotomies kind of dominating MBTI because they want to make it simple. It's kind of like DISC, right? DISC personality assessment. You a driver, or you an influencer, you whatever, steadiness, and then conscientious or whatever. They have different terms depending on what DISC assessment you're using, but they want to make it simple so it's widely applicable. Socionics is not widely applicable. It's very, very TI heavy. And so it makes it complicated to actually apply, and it has a lot of redundancy, a lot of extra stuff that's fluff, and getting down to the bare bones of Socionics kind of ruins the excitement about what's in it, especially when you start talking about interpersonal relationships, right? So, all right, that being said, okay, I don't know what's going. So I got to check some comments here. And how do I trust people? Eric Thor said he could easily beat you in a physical fight. I read to Socionic translate. Looks different to me. A lot of people, are you going to let him get away with that? Okay, Eric Thor, I'm not worried about him kicking my ass in a physical fight. I'm not worried about anybody kicking my ass in a physical fight. I'm more concentrated on getting this point across. It's the most important thing to me right now. So if you want to provide value on the chat and actually, help people out and answer some of those questions for me, I would appreciate that, as opposed to worrying about Eric Thor, because people are going to say what they're going to say. I don't really care if he said it or not. He probably didn't, because he seems like a nice guy, but whatever, right? So anyway, that being said, let's focus on the value of what we get out of these relationships in the sense of appealing to that. So when you're dealing with other people and they're not providing something you need, you even have a difficult time expressing what it is you need, and then you have to kind of throw it out there, right? I need this in my relationship. I need this particular aspect in my relationship. I need this thing in my relationship, and it's real difficult to throw it out there because it's kind of unconscious. So let's see. I'm just going through these comments. Okay. Come on, let's let the Eric Thor thing go. Who gives a shit? Like, who gives a crap? Like, come on, it's unnecessary. Who gives a shit? Like, you guys, the point here is more about being able to provide information as far as you actually helping people in your life. I don't give a shit who says I know shit or doesn't know shit. I don't care if it's Eric Thor, Eric with Talking Famous People, or freaking anybody else on this chat. I don't care, right? You're going to be evaluated by others on how well you maintain your relationships. And you may not be evaluated by everyone in that sense, but if you're wasting time worried about who says what, come on, we're not in high school, people. We're not fucking 12 years old. So let's get over this stupid shit and get back to the point, because the whole thing is understanding that at some core level, I'm deficient, right? I'm deficient in the sense of what I need that fulfillment from in my life, and you are too. And that's the whole point of psychological theory. So I don't really care about what someone else has to say. If they want to say it and they want to make a big deal out of it, they can tell me. They can just freaking pop on a live stream and we can hash it out. I don't give a shit. But right now, that's not the point. That's not what battle is in front of me right now. The battle in front of me is being able to get through my own shit and figuring out, okay, how do I screw up my relationships in my life? How am I constantly going through life and I'm damaging things around me because I'm not having a full understanding of how human interaction is? I don't know if you guys have this all figured out. It's just me talking to freaking myself on this damn camera, right? I don't know. So if you guys are not getting value from this type of video, then, I'm wasting my damn time. So the whole point is, I want to get back to what I'm talking about in the first place. And I want you guys to provide something to each other as well, because I am not an expert. I'm a person who is subject to my own flaws and my own problems, right? And my own things that I have to deal with. But I say this, and I want you guys to follow. The people who followed me for a long time have walked through this journey with me and have seen changes that I have made in my life and the things that I still struggle with. They haven't seen everything, obviously, because I don't put my entire life on YouTube. But the idea is that I still deal with things that obviously need to be addressed. And using psychological systems is what brings us together in the first place, and understanding how we have these flaws. Not so much what I'm good at. Oh, yeah, I'm an ENTJ, so that makes me the CEO of organization A. Who gives a shit, right? At the end of the day, if you're not finding fulfillment in life, If you're not finding your own fulfillment in life, then you're not finding shit. It doesn't matter what you think you are from an egoic level. If you're not having your own fulfillment, then you're missing something. You know, and it just, you know, I just want you guys to make sure that you stay on my point here, and you're focused on what's important. Maybe the things that are, you know, maybe the things that are important to me are not important to you. Maybe relationships, in the sense of being able to navigate human dynamic the remainder of your life, however long that may be, is not important to you. Right? But I just got done destroying one of my relationships because I have failed to understand something. Right? Destroyed it. One way or another, I destroyed it. And I didn't do my best. And I'm sure they didn't do their best either. There was something they missed, something I missed, and we both screwed up. We both screwed up somewhere. But this is not, that's the point of why we're here, right? That's the point of why we're trying to understand ourselves. I have so many people go on consultations with me, and the only thing they tell me what brought them to MBTI is, I want to understand myself more. Why? Why do you want to understand yourself more? Why? Because you want to live, you want to have more fulfillment in your interactions with people and life, right? You want to get more out of life. You want to extract more out of life. Gossiping about what shit someone is talking doesn't make a fucking difference in my life. It doesn't. It doesn't make a single difference. I don't give a shit who's saying what. I don't care. And because that's not what's important anymore. I'm not in high school. I'm not in middle school. I don't care. You know, so that's the point of this damn video, is if you have gone through your life and you have lost somebody you cared about because of mistakes that you've made, and you've lost somebody that you care about, and you may still care about each other, but you know you can't communicate anymore because of something you did, a blunder that you did, and you're having a hard time forgiving yourself because maybe that particular function is in your super ego, and you're criticizing yourself over and over again, because that's what I've been subject to for the last freaking 10 years, right? The pressure of having to fulfill something that I have always believed not to be necessary, but doing it anyway because everyone is telling me to do it. And I know that some people out there may be able to relate to what I'm saying. So, you know, that's what I'm talking about. And you have to understand that, you know. So I want you guys to really get the picture here, you know. So that's what this is about. If I was really involved in wasting time, I mean, if you really think it's important for me to know that someone's talking shit about me, then email me. But people are here to get the information that is set on this topic. And I had to go off track several times because of a few things that I needed to clear up due to my own lack of preparation. I kind of just popped this on and I didn't prepare for it necessarily. But clearing up some of the socionics terms, clearing up some of the differences between what I feel is difference between MBTI and socionics, and you know, those type of things, right? I'm over having YouTube wars. I'm over it. There are too many things out here, and there's too many people who need help to worry about what somebody says on YouTube. And people have lives. Everybody watching this video has a life. And there may be one thing that I say in this video that makes them think, right? One thing. There may be just a little smidgen, one little freaking nugget. I don't care what it is. It could be one little thing, you know, but I have went through hell in the past 6 months. Hell, mental freaking torture that I have placed on myself, not because of my life, not because of my circumstances, but myself. And it's why I've always pursued typology, to see what was going on. Why I put myself in such, why have I put so much stress on myself? Why have I put so much, you know, negativity? Why am I so cynical? Why have I pushed so hard against reality? Why have I forced my way through? Why do I feel like I have no luck, right? Why do I have to make my luck? These are questions that I ask myself a lot. I don't get caught up in sitting around twiddling my thumbs because things need to be done. But the idea is, as I'm doing these things, thoughts cross my mind. and they get pushed down, they get repressed, and then after a while they build up to the point where I'm like, what the freak is going on? Just like this live stream. What the freak is going on? So you know, so it's important. Let me get some of these questions taken care of. Okay, I'm going to go back up a little ways. So here we go. Do you think there is a pattern in relationships? Yes, I do. Let me go back up one more. How does one come about knowing their unconscious needs? Constant self-analysis, but more importantly, somebody recognizing it in you. If you find yourself being, okay, this is Rocknall the Time 99. If you find yourself being overly sensitive to something, this may be a super ego problem. If you find yourself welcoming some type of feedback because you know that it needs to be fulfilled some way, but it's not something that you've identified with, it's kind of like the opposite perspective of the ego. It's probably your super ego. This is more of your unconscious need. It requires a lot of self-analysis, but also having people point it out to you at times, and sometimes it sucks. Okay. Moving down is, do you think there's a pattern in relationships? Yes, we are all subject to patterns. Human beings are pattern-based creatures, and this is why NLP is important, because you start seeing these patterns unfold throughout life, and you start seeing the same shit, right? I've gone through the same pattern in every single relationship I've ever had, which is me becoming a bull in a china shop and wrecking everyone's emotions and pissing everybody off and freaking just destroying everything that I possibly can get my hands on. Overly aggressive and under-caring and appearing to be cold and hard and running over people like a bulldozer. And that's the standard pattern throughout my life. And I'm working on it, but it is the standard pattern. And yes, I think there's a pattern for everybody and how they view relationships. In the way that you may have topicality in a relationship, kind of answered that. As we move forward, it says, do you find it hard to set boundaries in relationships to find fulfillment? I don't really feel that fulfillment comes with setting boundaries. I feel that the boundary should be in areas of the superego. That's the boundary should be set in areas that if someone is targeting that, you have to let them know, like, this is an area that I'm really struggling with, and I have a hard time receiving feedback. But you're probably not going to be logical at that point. I mean, they're going to hit a soft spot. So let's see. Sylvia Lopez, my fulfillment is to have sex with an unhealthy ENTJ. That's good to know. Let's see. Do you find any patterns though that comes into your relationships that cause a go talk? Yeah, me. I already answered that. Let's see. Let's see. Haven't you always been cynical, or did you develop at the time? I've always been cynical. I don't think that's ever going to change, but I should learn how to cap it off better to the point where I welcome other information, right? I have a hard time keeping open-minded and giving the benefit of the doubt. This is why I identify with SLE a lot more than LIE, is because I don't see the hidden potential in people. I don't judge people by their values. I don't judge people as good or bad. I just am really, I present an openness temporarily, but it quickly fizzles out. And I'm more of a negativist in the Rhineland dichotomy than I am a positivist, which is LIE is a positivist, and I don't fit that Rhineland dichotomy. So yeah. So NLP, do you think that you don't want to deal with Eric Thor because there's some kind of super ego problem? No, I'm gonna skip that question. Which do you think is the most compatible type to INTJs? Well, the INTJs, if the INTJ is compatible with the ILI, if you're ILI, you're probably not an INTJ. It's a rare crossover. INTJs and MBTI are known to be drivers. ILIs tend to have a hard time getting things done, but they're both NITE. Okay, so the INTJs and MBTI tend to be drivers, like people who get a lot of crap done in short periods of time, whereas the ILIs are people who struggle with inertia. Okay, so if you're talking about the ILI, your dual is going to be the SEE. Okay, Layla Pop says, what is it when you break a relationship pattern then? Wouldn't you consider that a good thing? Yeah, you do want to break a relationship pattern to, you don't want to be like me sometimes and just destroying everything. That's not a good thing. NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. Gemini Mate says, I've been attracted to INFP guys and ENTP guys the most. And INFJ. Gemini, are you INFJ? I'm really confused on your type. Are you INFJ, INFP? I cannot nail your type down. I know you told me before. I've totally lost your. How do you find a way to identify the patterns and change the pattern for the better? Well, first off, it takes a lot of conflict for me to find the pattern, because somebody has to drill into my freaking skull. I'll refute every second of it, by the way. I will fight and fight and fight. And then when I'm away, I'm like, oh yeah, they're right. But way after the fact, it's like if someone, for example, this is one of the reasons why I struggle with IEEs, is because IEEs have a role SE, and they tend to push against. Sometimes they'll approach with a super ego, right? They'll approach with their NE and FI and Socionics, and it just drives me crazy. They don't like my TI in the way that I make logical sense. They see it as black and white, and then I tend to push and use aggressiveness, and to the point where they start using aggressiveness. And what happens is you're playing on egos now, right? And it's like, if you play on the ego field of the person who is identified with SE, they're just going to keep raising their level of force. It's all about competition and willpower. That now, it's not a good way to go after the SLE or the SEE, is by presenting force to them, because that's their ego. They're not going to allow themselves to be outforced by someone. It's just not going to happen, right? So when you're talking about these challenges and identifying these patterns, it's best to know that, it's best to know that you have a real, let me put it this way. It's best to know what this person is presenting to you. If you can keep your eye on what is happening psychologically, you might be able to actually pull yourself out of this rut, right? You might be able to catch it before it happens. All right. So, yeah, you might be able to catch it before it happens. So if you know that somebody's speaking to you, you need to listen to what they're saying first off, right? So you listen to what they're saying, and then you need to go, what type of information is this? Is this intuition of possibilities? Is this force? Is this pragmatism? Is this laws? Is it emotions? Is it relations? What is it? What is it happening? Is it senses? Right? What is it? What is being presented to me? And if you can actually take in that information in that manner and go, okay, before I react and before I say something, because it's really pissed me off, I'm going to think about what piece of information this is. I've done this recently and I actually did pretty well with it. I actually learned to not use force. Oh, right? So that was hard. It was hard. And it felt totally awkward. Did not feel like me at all. But it didn't really work, because I used another approach. I used the TI approach, and that happened to be in the superego too. So, but I was able to kind of adapt, and that's the flexing that I'm talking about. And if you can do that, then you can be successful in that way. So it appears that let's see. So Gemini, NIFETI-SE. So you're okay. You're INFJ and MBTI. And do you know your sociotype? I'm curious what your sociotype is. If you don't, that's fine. Ronan says, I'm attracted to INFP, ENTP girls. I'm an INFJ too. Okay. Now, Ronan, I'm assuming you're a guy because you're attracted to girls, but forgive my whatever here. I think you're a guy. So if you're a dude and you're attracted to girls, is it the physical attraction? Because most guys are physically attracted first. If a girl's hot, then it doesn't matter past that. Now, once you have, now maybe that's just me speaking from my limited scope and what I think, being what do I call this is my own perspective, right? Maybe I'm being speaking from my own ego, right? But and thinking that everybody's false consensus here is the word I was looking for. I'm thinking everybody thinks like me, but I would say that if you're attracted to those types, maybe because those types are displaying certain facial features that is attractive, or is it a personality attraction? And is it a personality attraction and you tend to think that they are those types because you're identified in certain aspects, or are they actually those types? Do they self-identify as those types, right? So these are things that we have to think of. Anyway, these are a few things that I want to make sure that we clear up, because I wonder, I seriously wonder if we are going through this journey of relationships and we are facing ourselves as our own worst enemy, because I know that I am. Emo Flu Facer says, do you usually have physical or emotional or mental attraction with someone you initiate a relationship with? I initiate relationships in the sense of, like, when I first see somebody, I would initiate the relationship based on a physical attraction. There's no other way. There's no other. I mean, I don't know anything. How? There's no other way I could be attracted, right? There's no other way I could be attracted. I mean, that's all you see, right? Maybe somebody else who can see more things other than surface level stuff, behind the scenes, can see the person's mood and state and all that crap. Maybe there's some other things that could be attractive, but in my world, I don't think so. I think it's I find it to be more a lack of knowing, right? Okay, so let's see. Generally curious, how do you as an ENTJ evaluate who to trust? Well, trusting in MBTI is it's not really covered by any information aspect, or I commingled that. It's not covered by any cognitive function. Is learning how to trust, right? Trust is another issue that is actually conferred in Socionics, but it's another thing that's outside of MBTI. MBTI does not cover the aspect of trust. It's relied more on personal experience. But I would say, as myself, I evaluate who to trust. I don't trust anybody. So, I wish I did, but I know that people are going to do what they do. I think everybody is going to do. They're looking out for their own self-interest. So let's see. Questions. All right. So what keeps you in a relationship with someone, or keeps you wanting to get to know someone? Nothing. Not yet, anyway. I tend to immediately disengage after a period of time. I do everything I can to get to know the person, and then after a while, I tend to keep getting to know other people, and time gets filled up, and other people disappear. There are periods where I have really spent a lot of time getting to know one person, but usually that fades away with time too. It's just a matter of time, depends on how interesting that person is, or how much we're providing for each other at the time. I think Damon drove Trey and that ENFP guy away, most likely. Yeah, INTJ, ENTJ is a mirror intertype. It's not really fulfilling. It's not bad. I mean, it can work out because you have the same values, but it's not as fulfilling as duality could be. Yeah, but I really ultimately do struggle with trust. I don't feel that you can evaluate somebody on their character. I think that there's too many aspects to character to evaluate someone. I think that you can't make those type of judgments. I think those judgments are flawed. So I think that you can categorize someone. A thief is a thief, right? Thief is a thief. Does that make them a bad person? Not necessarily. Maybe they're trying to feed their kids. So who knows? This is it's tough. It's tough. So anyway, point being, and where I really want to summarize this and really get down to the core point of this is just understanding that our intertype relationships have created a dynamic in which we need to understand what's going on behind the scenes. Stop getting defensive, stop overreacting, and stop pushing ourselves to a point where we think we have to be a certain way to make something succeed, but instead learn to love yourself, right? Sujit Nag, by duality, you mean ESFP, INTJ? No, I mean SEE and ILI. If you're using MBTI terms like that, you're going to make it kind of, it's going to get weird. All right. Because a party loving, fun loving, sorry, I mixed those words up. They is not going to be really super compatible with an INTJ who wants to drive a vision forward. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen. But an SEE with an ILI is going to be way more compatible. Okay, so let's try to differentiate the two here. How do I balance my feelings toward my romantic partner without killing or losing myself in the feeling? How do I balance my feelings towards my romantic partner? What do you mean by that? Because I mean, do you feel like you have to be someone else, Phoenix? Do you feel like you have to be like not yourself in that relation? Yes, TP guys turn me off with their superficiality. I look for more depth. I think that's why INFP guys are so attractive, but also with the NTP fun, confident, and expansive perspective that opened my mind. Huh. Superficiality. I think I'm pretty superficial. I'm not an ESTP, but I judge myself as pretty superficial. I can't see what I thought I was able to see. I struggle with romance. I either lose myself in it or just find it as a distraction from my goals and essence. Okay, I don't know if that was the answer to the problem. All right, so how do you think about making a video on self-love or how to cultivate self-love? No, truthfully, emo flu facer, I cannot, because this is an area I struggle a lot with. I think I'm a great person in the sense of like what I can provide value-wise to people, certain people, but I don't know about self-love yet. And I don't think, I mean, obviously I can teach NLP tactics to cultivate it, but as far as like, I like to speak from my own experience a lot and kind of speak of things that I've kind of pushed through. This is an area that I'm constantly working on, and I can't say that I've made a tremendous amount of progress to really provide a tremendous amount of value as far as anything subjective. I can provide the NLP tactics that are supposedly designed to cultivate this type of feeling now. So let's see. Lately Pop, yeah, you can love yourself. And everybody annoys you, Sylvia, so I'm not really worried about that. What do you think of INTJ and INTP relationship? If this is MBTI, I mean, I guess it can work. I mean, I don't have much thoughts on it. So anyway, guys, I'm going to get back to the point here. Stop reading these comments so I can close this video out here in a little bit. The concept of relationships really boils down into your own self-development and your awareness of what's going on at any given time. And at any given time, if you are struggling with your relationships, you need to take a step back and realize, okay, what type of relation is this? Is it truly healthy? Is it worth it in the end? Is it not worth it? And I don't mean worth it as in is the person worth it, right? But is it, I'm talking about, is the problems to come going to be yielding something that is fruitful for both of you, not just you, but both of you. If you realize that you're tanking somebody and you're really taking someone down, and they're also taking you down, it's probably not worth it, right? You're really hurting somebody in the long run. And it'll probably wind up in failure anyway when you meet somebody else that doesn't do that, or that actually appreciates you for being who you are, right? In your own ego, right? So who are you? And that's what it's about. I don't think it's gonna be a long journey for me to get this fully worked out in my own head. But the idea is understanding just these few things that we can really just work out in ourselves at any given time, and we can kind of see what's going on behind the scenes if you can take a pause. So the idea, let me answer this question real quick. What rock and all time 99. So do your relationships fall out in a sudden manner due to conflict, or do they wane away? Both. And the answer is both, but they fall out quickly because I'm like I said, a bull in a china shop. I tend to bust everything up. I tend to destroy and stampede through people's emotions, force my way, shove my perspective down people's throats. Apparently, that's what I do, and then people are willing to work through it, and then the conflict's over. But slowly over time, that kind of tapers down. So, yeah, it and sometimes it's instantaneous. I can name both instances where both have happened. So, anyway, yeah. So you got to realize at what point, is it beneficial for both of you. And if you're thinking about yourself, that's probably too much. You probably should think about the other partner too. Are you providing value for them as well? And I don't see relationships as something that is. This is probably my own limited perspective, but I don't see relationships as something that is. I had the idea I wanted to talk about. Sorry, I'm really exhausted today. I don't see relationships as something that should be evaluated based on how great someone is. You're a great person. We should be in a relationship. Yeah. No, I think it should be evaluated on compatibility. I think it should be evaluated on communication. I think it should be evaluated on common values. This is why I tend to lean more toward the Socionics relationship ideal than a lot of people probably would, because I'm not just attracted to somebody because I'm attracted to somebody. I'm attracted to somebody because physically, obviously, but I want somebody to be in a relationship. If I were to ever get in a relationship that had shared similar values, I would want my kids to be raised in a certain way. And if this person has a different alternative value viewpoint, then it probably is not going to be very compatible in anything that I would do. This person would actually be serving as an obstacle to that, regardless of how great that person is. Like I said, I've dated some amazing people in my life. And because we weren't super compatible, ultimately the relationship wasn't something that we were able to work out. Let me put it that way. All right, so let's see. Damon is too hard to please. Good luck, Sylvia. Yeah, probably so. Probably way too complicated to please in that regard. I mean, some people have tried really hard, and I see that's what I've been told. Nothing. They tend to tell me that nothing they do is correct. Nothing to do is right. So that I hope that someday I can work through some of this crap and get this all figured out for myself as well. So anyway, psychology of relationships. That's what this was about. Kind of went off topic. It was live stream. This is why I hate live streams, because the comments where people want to hear kind of sidetracks from the main point. But hopefully I got the main point out, which is when a relationship fails, it can serve as an excellent learning experience for you, right? It can serve as what area did this person target in your own super ego, right? Whatever, or your own super id or your id or whatever, right? And you can see how these relationships can serve as a great mechanism to push forward. And you may feel a sense of longing, a sense of pain, a sense of hurt. And people do some screwed up crap sometimes. At least it may seem that way. But then if you look at their motive, you realize they're just human. And that's what's important, is being able to let those things go and not build it up. Suji, I told you. I told you directly. MBTI is not about dating compatibility. It's not. There are things that you can obviously predict, like an extrovert is going to have a hard time with an introvert in MBTI. Introvert wants to stay inside and typically not do much, right? As far as going out and enjoying people and whatever. And the sensor is going to have a hard time with an intuitive. I see the world this way. The intuitive does not. The intuitive sees the world this way. And you're going to have that communication barrier. Right? A thinker is going to have a hard time with the feeler, and a judger is going to have a hard time with the perceiver. The perceiver wants to explore life and kind of leave things open-ended. The judger wants to control everything. So MBTI has a hard time with compatibility because no one's compatible in MBTI ultimately. I mean, it's not about compatibility. It's about perspective. You know, there's a lot of those things about MBTI. So don't do dating in relationships in MBTI to the extent of which we had. I would suggest that whoever's watching this live stream, get your sociotype, find your dual, and let me know how it goes. Right? I want to know. I want to know if you, from firsthand and secondhand experience, how dualization actually results for you. How's the communication? Is it effective? How do you make the other person feel? Right? What do you do for the other person? That's and vice versa. What do they do for you? I want to know. So I'm pausing because I'm waiting for a particular comment. But anyway, yeah, go find the dual, but find your type first. What is your type and how does dualization work? And then see how it works with the semi-dual. What's the difference? What's the problem? How are they targeting? Because the semi-dual is going to have a little bit of differences too, a little bit of challenges of its own. I'm curious to know from firsthand experience how these relationships actually work out. From someone who doesn't get in relationships, I can't really tell. I can't tell as much anyway. I can tell what my interactions have been like, but as far as being cozy and sitting by the fireplace, whatever. So here we got another question. I'm going to end this stream here in about 5 minutes. So questions, please post them. Kaylin B says, do you consider yourself to be impatient in relationships? Absolutely. I am impatient all around. I wish I wasn't, because I know that good things come to those who wait, but I hate waiting. I'm extremely impatient. I don't give people space. When there's a problem, I want to solve it immediately. And sometimes people need space. So I don't know what's going on here. What site do you recommend for Socionics? So the thing I don't recommend any test. Testing is not going to help you. The only test I would recommend is a Quadra test. The Quadra test, to me, gives you a good direction, right? It narrows it down to 4 types, what type you are inside that Quadra. And that would probably give you you can narrow that down even further, figuring out what your point of least resistance is and what your ego is, right? What do you identify with the most? How do you see yourself? And then your areas of competence, right? And if your ego is attached to those things, that's probably your ego base, right? Your ego, what's in your ego block? It's what you present to the world, right? So Aaron says, how's Socionics better with relationship prediction when it's so mathematical? I don't know if it's mathematical. It's just systematical. I don't really know about the math. I've never really seen much math in Socionics. I've seen more systematic psychology. So I would say I've never seen math in Socionics. I don't know if there's, let me think if there's any numbers. Only numbers I know is the 8 functions. I mean, it's in the order. Like you have your leading, you have your creative, you have your role, vulnerable, you have your suggested, mobilizing, and then you're ignoring and demonstrative. And that's the only numbers I know of. So when you're talking about relationships, you're talking about psychology between 2 people. And again, as I said earlier in this stream, when you're appealing to those things on the inside of someone else, then you start seeing how relationships will come to fruition. Or if you're presenting something that someone rejects with their superego. If you're presenting something with the superego, and you're attacking, I'm not even going to use attacking. If your ego is identified with somebody else's superego, they're going to feel like you're an extra critic. Okay. They don't need another dad. They already have a dad in their head criticizing them constantly. And if their ego is your super ego, you're going to feel like you got another dad because you've internalized it, right? You've internalized this thing. So it's not about being mathematical. It's about understanding psychology. So, Damon, as an educated guy in dating, are gender roles in the fixed states that we all get attracted to, and do they top all their details of personality and different preferences? I'm not sure what you're asking here, but I'm going to see if you're asking this. Gender roles are the fixed states that we all get attracted to. No, I don't think it's more about gender roles. I think it's about actual people presenting things to your super id. I think that's what's going to be most attractive, right? Is whatever's they're presenting is attracted to your super id. For example, I don't like extremely forceful women. I don't. I don't like. I've never been attracted to them. Let me put it that way. I don't dislike them. I just never been attracted to them. Women who are like, go, get things done, like super business-like. Never been attracted to it. I've been more attracted to women who find meaning in things, deeper meaning. Being able to look at something and find out how it's related and connected to everything else, and how they're able to take my visions and the things that I want to accomplish and give it meaning and purpose and direction. I found that to be way more attractive in my life than someone who actually gets things done, because that's what I'm for. So I don't really find someone just like me attractive. No, it's not NE, it's NI. Finding how things course over time. NE is my super ego. I don't really relate to it. It's actually really annoying for me. So it's tough. It's really, really tough for me to deal with NE. As far as the Socionics version of ideas, it's a super ego function, and it tends to be, yes, it would be IEIs, not INFJs, IEIs. So, yeah. Anyway, so NI is in my, as far as I understand Socionics, like I said, I'm not an expert. As far as I understand, it's in my super id, and it's something that I actually seek in my partner. And it's something that I actually have truly sought my entire life, is women who find meaning in things. Unfortunately, I have not dated people very often who actually do that effectively. So that's been a major downfall. I've always wanted the word I've always used when I was younger, when I was a teenager, was deep. I always wanted a super deep woman who could see things beyond. Like, I mean, I don't even have to see their face. If I see a woman's writing, right? And I see a woman's writing, and I see that it has explicit and attractive meaning, I can feel an attraction toward that person. You know, so that's the attraction that I feel unconsciously, like I really need that. So yes, the SLE-IEI is the typical standard beta, quadra, female and male gender roles. But it doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that everybody's going to follow that. Because if you look at if you had an IEI male and a SLE female, it would be the opposite. It would be the SLE female doing all the actions, doing all the things, getting all the things done, and the IEI giving the female more perspective, right? Deeper meaning behind the actions that the SLE is presenting, also giving them the understanding of relations in a nonverbal way, right? Targeting that weak function, your vulnerable function, in a way that's demonstrative. So it's not so intrusive. It's not so offending to the superego, right? So if we start seeing that, and we start understanding how that actually comes to be, then we start seeing the real result of it, right? So when you boil it down, it's not about gender roles. Now, the problem with me was that I tend to cling to those gender roles because I'm an SLE male, at least from what I understand, right? So because I'm an SLE male, it makes it look like I'm more attracted to old school gender roles, and I am. Old school gender roles, but it's not my position to say that women should be here and men should be here. It's more of that's what I'm attracted to, so I tend to uphold that, right? I tend to have that kind of viewpoint on relationships. And you can see this in my other video, and I think it was called Sexuality and Relationships, one of my old videos on this channel, my position on it from way back in the day, and it's still the same. So, yeah, and well, yeah, Kaylin, deep people have a lot of walls in my experience, which requires patience. Yes and no. Deep, I don't even know what a deep person is really, but people who provide meaning, like the IEI, for example, it doesn't require patience. The IEI actually prefers the aggressive approach. They like the aggressive approach. They like the forcefulness. So it's because that's their super id. That's why it's a duality. That's why it works so well. Yeah. So so they want that person to push through those walls. They want that person to break through them. They don't want the person to sit there. I'll give you time. Just worry. Just wait. That's not the SLE's approach. And the IEI wants that force to be applied to the walls, and they want somebody who can bust through those walls and get to them. That's what it is. It's not. And so whereas I would consider a lot of the intuitive types deep because they have good use of both NE and NI. Okay, so I'd consider them being able to see meaning beyond things, right? So I would if we're talking about the colloquial definition of deep, I would consider them intuitives to be the people in socionics who prefer intuition or who are intuitives or whatever term you want to use. Those people are the ones that I would consider deep. And for example, the ESI as FINE, right? This is a person that's going to have more of a wall. No, they're not going to make it easy. But see, that's the thing. And Kaylin, that's the thing about not making it easy is the SLE is the person who does not give up. They're the person who breaks through and busts through challenges. They don't quit when something's easy or something's hard. They don't quit. That's the whole point of duality. So, Sujit, I would say that there is no type that's the deepest. If I'm talking about an ESI, for example, which is FINE, this is a person who's got a lot more walls because they lead with relations, and it's more about qualitative bonds. They're not going to just open up to anybody. So, yeah. So it all depends on what your sociotype is. So. It takes patience and it takes force. Yeah, it takes force to get through the IEI, and that's what they actually want. And it's going to be, yeah, nothing happens in an instant, but that's the whole point, is that nobody's going to, they appreciate that approach. Whereas the freaking EII, the EII does not. The EII hates that approach. So SLE and EIIs are rivals. They're conflictors because the EII does not like the forceful approach. They actually hate it. It strikes the super ego, and they rebuke it. They think it's the worst way. And so these types, SLEs, would not be so successful with the EIIs. So yeah, that's the whole point. So that being said, I'm going to end this live stream, I think. So that way we can talk about more of this later at another day. But anyway, this has been long enough. I'm an hour and 45 minutes. I appreciate you guys hopping on the live show here. I'm sorry it's been disorderly. It's just kind of open forum here. I'm going to get on the Slack chat. I've been on there a lot more recently. If you want to communicate, tag me. If you're a member of there, please tag me. If you want to communicate, I'll pop on. I've been on here and there, and I'll be on a lot more frequently in the coming days. Slack is still available. It's mbtv-chat.slack.com. Okay, so mbtv-chat.slack.com. The link is also in the description of this video. And join me there. Feel free to ask questions. A lot of smart people on there. I think there's a good amount of people that have great ideas on there, and I'd like to see some more interaction going on. Like if you've seen on the live chat today, I'd like to see that consistently because you guys give me ideas too. It's not just me teaching and everybody learning. That's not the idea. You guys give me the ideas. You guys give me topics, things that you want me to discuss. I find something that I find interesting. Somebody's saying, whether it's human design or astrology or whatever, that somebody wants to talk about, I study up on it, and then I usually will make a video on it. So let's get on there if you want to continue any conversation, and we'll go from there. So everybody, take care. Have a good day. Enjoy your weekend. If it's already Sunday for you, great. Hope you all have a good time. Take care.